Dan Carlisle is a true legend of the sport. In 1983, he became the first man to shoot a perfect 200-200 in Olympic trap. That was the year after he won the World Ski Championship with a 199-200. He was one of the pioneers to bring sporting clays to the USA, and in his later years has won a couple of World Veterans titles at English Sporting. Dan not only is a great competitor, he's a world-class coach. Let's listen to what he has to say about his influence in the world of shotgun shooting.
Dan, all the way from Texas, thanks for your time this morning. It's great to see your face again.
You too. So I haven't seen you guys in a while. It's been 10, 15 years, I think, maybe more, something like that.
Yeah, well, we've spoken to a couple of people in this series that know a little bit about you, which we'll get to shortly. Glenn Eller, we spoke to, and Josh Lakatosh, that both had plenty of stories about you, but a lot of the stuff that we couldn't put to air, so we've edited that out. Danny, the first time I met you...
But don't believe anything.
Danny, the first time I met you, the Army team made a trip down to Melbourne, Australia in 1984 to our national Olympic trap and Olympic ski titles before the Los Angeles Olympics. And I was an ATA shooter, but when I heard the Army were coming to town, I went and entered that title. And I didn't shoot too badly. Terry Howard won it, you finished second, and I actually beat your teammate Wally Zobel for third. But your influence on me was far greater than you knew. It actually turned me into an ISSF shooter because I had no interest until I saw you guys, and you guys were just different. Your skeet team made our skeet team look ridiculously bad, but I just thought the way you guys handled yourselves, it made me want to take Olympic trap. So thanks for keeping me poor all my life because of what you did. Danny, do you remember?
Welcome to the club.
Do you remember the trip down to Melbourne?
I do remember well. I remember a lot of flies that I remember. One thing, they're everywhere. So after a few days, you get used to that. So, you know, you don't pay any attention to them unless they're under your glasses. Yep, that was a fun trip. I remember you too. You were 16, 15.
I was still a teenager. I hadn't hit 20 yet. It was an interesting time. Can I ask you about back then? The gun that you shot with was, I know in your later years you shot a Beretta, but you weren't always a Beretta shooter, were you?
No, I was a Perazzi shooter. It was my first contract with a gun company was Perazzi for international trap. And then after the 84 Olympics, then I went to Beretta, and I was with Beretta for 25 years.
If I can take you back before that, back when I remember seeing you shooting, which also, must I say, also inspired me to take up the sport. You were shooting a semi-automatic, from memory, the same type of gun I was using, which was a Remington 1100. Is that right?
That's correct. I was using 1100. I was pretty much the only one. I remember showing up in '77 in France for my first world championships in skeet. I made the skeet team that year. I made both teams. And I was the only one with an auto, and they were really talking like I wasn't going to be able to use it, like it was unsafe or something. So we had to plug the bottom barrel, the plug, so it only held two. So it was a lot of kind of confusion there with all the head referees and everything because no bloke can shoot a automatic. Come on, that's not right. Something, but it was okay. It was fun. It was fun.
Danny, let me just fast forward it a little bit. 1982, Caracas in Venezuela, the World Championships. You front up with the same semi-automatic 1100 to shoot the skeet competition, and you win it. You shoot 199 out of 200, and you're the world skeet champion. The very next day, you're shooting the World Olympic Trap Championship with your Perazzi.
Correct.
And you shot off for the gold medal. You hit 197 out of 200. If there was a high overall award for the two events, you would have won it by several hundred. But there wouldn't have been anybody else, I would imagine, even shot in both events. To shoot 396 out of 400 was a terrific effort. Was that your best year of shooting?
Oh, it was a start. I really wanted to medal back-to-back games like that because I shot both games pretty well. And, you know, I kind of thrived on the tension and the pressure too. Of course, had good teammates. They shot well too. We won all the team matches. It was a big moment for me to be in the opportunity to have a chance to win both world championships back to back. It's never been done. It probably never will be done. So, but I did come in fourth. The Russian and I tied. Azanov, he was my bud. We always got in trouble every time I talked to him. He got in trouble. I didn't, but you know how the Russians were back in the day. So, anyway, it was pretty exciting. But the next year was probably the year that I was probably one of my very biggest goals was to break the 200 and the Olympic trap and set the world record. It was a big record, a long one.
You speak about teams and you know, the fact that that team was a really strong team. Do you think that's largely why you were so successful the following year, due to the depth and the quality of the competitors you were shooting with consistently?
Sure. I mean, all those guys are boss, and you know, we had Wally, Zobel, and God, like Blazik, and God, I mean, Ken Blasey. I mean, there's guys there could really bang. Byron Ballard, God, they did good, great shots, and they all made teams. And you know, you had, you know, Terry Howard was there, but he couldn't quite make the team. He never really made one. He was right there in the running every time. He could shoot, but just couldn't get on the team. But other than that, you know, we set a lot of world records. I know 4 or 5 world records we set. We even beat our own a couple of times.
Danny, your skeet team was yourself and Matt Drake, Al Mullins and Dean Clark. They were 4-man teams back then. You could not pick a better skeet team ever than that. And no wonder you broke your own world records, because there was no other team that could come close to that.
No, the skeet team was just by far the best that's ever been, ever. There's nobody, we won everything team match we ever shot together.
Obviously, you went through the Army Marksmanship Unit. What drew you into that unit to start with back in 1974?
Well, I was an All-American trap shooter, American-style trap, All-American as a junior. And the Army in those days, that's where they recruited from, was that All-American list. And, you know, I had a choice to do some other things, but I really wanted to pursue shooting. I thought I could make some sort of career out of it, possibly. So my parents were all for it. They said, go for it. So I went in the Army, and it was probably the best decision I've ever made. It's given me a career. I love going to work every single day, and I work all day. I just got off a 5-day run last night, got in about 10 o'clock, and it's a job I can do every single day without, it's just fantastic. I love it. It's incredible. I got a good life.
You're a machine. If I could just take you back for a little while, though, back to
Right.
when you started. I know you do a lot of coaching now. I'm just interested at what age you started, and did you also receive a lot of coaching in the beginning?
You know, we had in the beginning at Fort Benning, when in the old days, there wasn't any coaching really. There was a few guys, Grant Elsing, which was a legend in skeet trap and pigeon shooting in our country. I mean, there was one of the top 3 or 4 guys that just ruled. They won every pigeon shoot, every trap shoot, every sport. I mean, every skeet shoot, all of that in those days. He was a pro at the club at Greater Houston, where I shot my first registered target, my first trap target in 1969. But he passed away kind of right after that, within a few years. And never really got to know him. Only got to talk to him a few times. And he gave me one little piece of advice one time. He said, Dan, I asked him about shells because I was shooting a Model 12 and it was kicking me pretty hard. And we reloaded our own shells. So I asked him about 1 ounce and an 1/8 shell or a 1 ounce. Would they kick less, or would it hurt my scores? Would I shoot, you know, not as good? And he looked at me and he says, boy, it's not the package you send, it's the address you put on it. And I'll never forget that. My whole life, I was 14 years old. I mean, he's like 6'4", this guy, and I was a little bitty, staring up at him. And he was like you know, he's a legend. He was absolutely unbelievable. He was old, and he was probably in his mid-70s at that point. So that was the only instruction. I've never had a lesson before Burl Branham. It's the only lesson I've ever had in my life is from Burl Branham. Now, I get lessons from some of my coaches when I'm out shooting. I don't shoot like as much as I used to. I haven't pulled the trigger in a few months, and then it was probably a year before that. And so when I'm ready to go to a big shoot, I'll have Steve Liberta or Anthony or Corey or somebody stand in behind me and you know, help me out a little bit and dial me in. So
Well, you mentioned the Caracas Pan American Games in Olympic trap in 1983, and you became the first person in the history of the sport to hit 200 out of 200 in a world event. So that obviously led you into the Olympic Games in 1984, a home Olympic Games for the United States, which you shot off for the gold medal. You ended up with a bronze medal, but you medalled. After that, then you swapped to a SO4 Beretta, and it was a 32-inch barrel gun, which nobody really had ever seen a 32-inch barrel SO4. Why did you choose that particular gun?
Well, the MX-8 I shot was 32 inches as well, and I like the feel. And, you know, I think if you play the game right, that's the right length barrel, because it's a game of slow when it's right. It doesn't feel rushed at all. And the longer the barrel, the less the motion to cover the same amount of distance. So it's just a smoother move with the longer length barrel. I'm a still believer that today in sporting clays, most of the best players shoot 32-inch barrel, if not 34-inch.
And what about your feelings for the barrel length in skeet then?
About in skeet, that was 28-inch barrel, but it's equivalent to a 30-inch barrel. An automatic is a 2-inch longer receiver, which is equivalent to a 30-inch over and under. So it would probably be, if I shot an over and under in skeet, it would have probably been. And then I did shoot one later on, a SO4 over and under, and that was it was 28-inch. They didn't make a 30-inch. Beretta wouldn't make it that.
If you were shooting it today, if you were making a comeback, what would you be, or what would you recommend if you were coaching someone in the ISSF skeet discipline now?
I probably think probably 30 inches is the way to go. It moves smooth. If you've got a good mount, you know how to play the game and match the speed and square the bird off properly. It probably works fine. I would think there's a lot of guys that shoot that, I'm sure, in the game. I know some of the Army boys do. They do well with it.
Well, Dan, after the 84 Olympics, you left the Army, and then you became one of the pioneers of sporting clays in the United States. And you were really the guy that brought sporting clays to the USA. And we've seen, obviously, of recent times that it's just grown and grown and grown. But you yourself, obviously, you were a national champion at it, but you've gone on and actually won a couple of world veterans titles in English sporting. You obviously still compete pretty well.
Well, I can still shoot. It's just the loving part of it. Do you go out and train 3 days a week now?
Yeah, no.
Do you? No. Okay. After a point, there's nothing else to prove, really. I'm a 4-time Hall of Famer. I've got 16 national championships, 4 Pan American championships, got an Olympic medal. I don't know what to say. It's just I've held 4 world records at one time, individual world records. I don't know if anybody's ever done that before, but it's just the only thing I can do is go the other way. I still enjoy it, but of course I want to win, but I don't want to train. I see thousands of birds every single week, thousands a day, really. I average about 2,500 birds a day with my clients. So gun clubs like me for that. But I see so many clays, when I get a day off, I want to work in my yard or go fishing, or when hunting season's here, go hunt a little bit. I like to hunt birds, and it's a fun thing for me to do. I do like doing that. I'm still a pretty good shot at that. So it's enough for me.
Well, and in a previous interview in another series, we had a long discussion with George Digweed, and George spoke very, very highly of you. I like that. When I mentioned George's name, you just started laughing. That's what most people do when I mention George's name. They just start laughing. But I asked George a question which I'm going to ask you, and just an honest answer, and George was very honest about it as well. If next week we took the 10 best USA FITAS shooters to a range in Italy, and George took the 10 best English FITAS shooters to the same range, and you guys had a competition against the British team over 200 targets, who'd win the team's event today?
That's a good question. I think it'd be pretty tight, pretty close. George and Richard are a force within themselves. They're incredible. 30 or 35 world championships between the two of us. Two of them.
Only 2.
We don't. Yeah, just 2 people.
They've got to get.
We've got 2. We've got 3 now. 22 George has. What's Richard have? Like 3 total in America, I think. What was it? Bobby, Anthony, Bobby, and Corey, right?
Derek Mine.
Yeah, we have that. I mean, I would think right now in this stage of shooting, we're finally got to the right level that we can compete against the English. They're a force to be, they're reckoned with. They own this sport. We're still somewhat infants, but we're finally reached a point that we have 5 or 6 guys that can really shoot, and girls. And we have some good girl shooters, and really good. Annabelle Ayers, she dominates the women's classes. We have Megan Harrington coming up strong. Des, she's awesome. So, I mean, there's a lot of women shooters that are moving up the ladder. They've always been pretty good in our country. Diane Sarantino won a lot of world championships. But the men's division's a whole new world. I remember my first world shoot-off championship, and it was in America. I'd been in one before, but this was in America. And Georgia had 10-bird lead on us. I was second, 10 birds behind him. And it's funny because he's always messing with me. You know how George is. And we get along great. I love him. He's really a good guy. Once you get to know him a little bit, he's kind of rough around the edges at first, but once he gets to know you, he loosens up pretty good. He looks at me and he goes, "Dan, you nervous?" And I looked at him and I said, "George, if you broke a 0 on the first station, I might start getting a little tense." And he just laughed really loud. He thought that was funny. But no, George I'm not sure what the in total would be, but the top 3 guys I think we could hang with. But the level below that, I'm not sure. I'm not sure we're at that level yet, that deep or that strong. Are you with me?
Yeah, it's a good answer, but I'll give you George's answer, okay? And I'll tell you. And this is for the public record. He said, hands down, the USA would beat the British team because the British team hate each other that much. Only 3 of them would survive. The other 7 would stab each other.
Well, I have seen a little bit of that going on there. They have a hard time figuring all that out there, but there's some guys, Clark, and there's guys that can shoot there that are just really good. If they could really get on the same play page, it'd be hard to deal with. So I'm thinking I'm going to call a tie right now. We'll just call it a tie.
All right.
We finally got to the point in the last 6, 7 years, 8, 10 years that we're finally – it took 40 years to do that. They had a 40-year jump on us, and it took us 40 years to catch them. So that's really about the size of it, really.
That's a really good diplomatic answer, Dan, and I wouldn't expect anything else. I just want to, before we talk a little bit about your coaching and the other people that you've influenced, I want to talk about Matt Drake. Matt Drake was a unique person, and you spent more time with Matt than anybody, and you obviously saw him win the '84 Olympic Games. But one of the things at a competition that we were both at this event, and it's still the blackest day I ever believe in ISSF, was the 1987 World Championship in Venezuela. And in the final of the men's ski, it got down to a competition between Matt Drake and Andre Bonelli from Italy. And the referees had clearly made their mind up that the first target that Matt didn't hit right in the middle, they were going to call it lost target. So Bonelli would get a chance to shoot off with him. And that happened on the very last target of the competition, low 8. Matt clearly broke it, but the referees clearly didn't want Matt to win. Do you still remember that day?
I do remember that day. That was a tough day right there for Matt. He was the best ever. Nobody was like Matt. Matt had a philosophy. I said, "How you gonna break them all of them today, Matt?" He goes, "Yeah, I'm gonna break 100. How you gonna do that?" He goes, "Well, I'm gonna go out and break 25 first. But when I step up on high 1, I'm just gonna break high 1." That's what he said. That was his thing. I'm gonna break 100, but I'm gonna break 25 first. But when I step up on station 1, I'm just gonna break high 1 first, and then I'm gonna break a double. That's how he thought. It's just one at a time to Matt. And he had a place in his brain that he could go like nobody else I've ever seen. He was won Malloy's biggest pitch and shoot in the world. He's won the National Sporting Clay Championships in 89, 90, 90. Beat me by a bird. I came up to the clubhouse, thought I'd won it for sure. And I looked at the scoreboard. That's just one of those days where you're like, Matt, got me again, man. He could shoot. I really enjoyed competing with Matt. He got in a little spell there when in 82, around that range, 81, 82, I started shooting. I won like the first 4 shoots I went to and skied. And he was there, and it hurt his feelings a little bit. And then when I won the Worlds that year, it was over. Nobody else won anything after that. He put his foot down after that. And when Matt put his foot down, he could shoot. There's no doubt. He was the best. He's the best this country has ever produced or will produce, probably. Besides Vinny. Vinny can shoot too, but Matt could have won 3 in a row just as easy. I'm sure of it.
I'm sure he should have won that day in 1987, but he had a unique technique. Was that a technique that was taught to him by somebody in the marksmanship unit? Because I remember Dan, when he came to Australia with that technique, which he virtually squatted with his backside on the ground. Every Australian skeet shooter tried that for the next 2 years, and half of them ended up getting chiropractic surgery because they just couldn't do it like Matt could do it. But who taught him that? Was that something that you guys taught him?
Well, we all did it. We all squatted like that. Alan Mullins was the lowest of anybody, 6'4", and you know, his tail end was that far off the ground. Matt was a little bit higher. I was a little bit higher than that. And Dean he kind of had both knees bent, but not really down low. He was the straightest of the bunch of us. So we all had pretty close to that same sort of style. You know, when I first grabbed a ski gun, that's the position I went into. It just felt more comfortable. It was easy for me to move. I don't shoot sporting like that, but when I first started sporting in 85, I shot with my knees with a lower crouch position for a little while, for a few years. But everybody was young then. It was easier.
I can recall a time watching Matt Drake ride a unicycle around and shoot a perfect 25 in ski. So I'm pretty sure he could have stood any way he wanted and hit target. But is there a theory behind it? You know, I've heard that it's because you see more of the target by being lower. Is that correct?
No, you don't see any more of the target. No, it's just positioned so your body can actually rotate better, smoother, and it's easier to rotate. That's all. I mean, you know, Matt, I've seen Matt break 100 straight in the competition one time, and the gun went off on low 5 as it came up and never even got in his shoulder, and he smokes the target. And I'm like, he turns around, he had a big smile on his face. I was shooting in the squad with him. I'm just laughing. I mean, that was Matt. Yeah, I believe he could put 1 foot up in the air and shoot and still beat everybody. It wouldn't have made any difference. He just got it done. He could see the bird like nobody else on the planet.
Danny, earlier on the week we've spoken to Josh Lakatos and Glenn Eller, and both of them have had a lot of praise for the success that they had on the influence that you had over their careers. And you got into young Lakatos's head when he was just a little boy, and you scarred him for life, but he learned a lot from you. He said he never ever loaded as many sporting clay traps at Rahoggi's while you were coaching him. So you made him work for it, which was great. What can you tell us about both of those guys?
Well, Josh, you know, his mom and dad would drop him off at the gun club because he was probably 13 or 14, something like that. Maybe, 13 probably. And he was a small kid, you know, he could shoot. He already had talent the first day I ever saw him. He had the eye. Just a matter of learning some of the mechanics to be able to play the game a little better. He always had the ability to see the bird well. And that's the key. You know, if you take a 12-year-old and they really don't know anything about shooting, the first thing you do is teach them how to actually see the clay. And it's a survival instinct. Our sport's kill or be killed. You either kill it or it kills you. It's just stored in a different part of our brain. And that survival part, you know, it's you got to instill that first, and that's looking at the clay. Either you look at the gap at the last split second and stall the gun out and miss. That's why most people can't shoot. That's only why the magic 0.5% of all the shotgun shooters are just good. There's only half of that great, simply because of that reason. I mean, it's hard to make people quit looking at the gun once they've done it for 3 or 4 years. So when I get a kid like that, all of them. I do hundreds of kids a year. We work with a couple foundations here in Texas. And in Arkansas, done 500-600 a year. So, you know, we're instilled to those kids everything we know about the game. We give classes, we work hard with them, and the key number one thing is making sure they understand how to truly look at the clay and not listen to their dad.
Danny, did you have grey hair before you started coaching Glenella? Danny, tell us about Glenella, an Olympic champion in 2008. You had a lot to do with his success.
Well, you know, I've always told people this, Russell. I'm not pulling the trigger for you. I might be able to teach you everything about it, but I can't do it for you out there in the heat of battle. And he deserved that himself. He got all of that. He did it. I watched him shoot every shell too. And that was the best time because I actually got to go on the field. And as a personal coach, they let us on the field. And that was a cool deal to watch him win that. I was really happy. It's a long journey.
When you talk about looking at the target and the importance of that, how important is it for you at the beginning, especially with a young kid, to establish eye dominance?
Eye dominance is important. There's a lot of theories. You can shoot with both eyes open, either dominance, and I'm not a firm believer of that. There's a new doctor that's been working with us in clays here in our country the last 5 years, named Dr. Colo. He's just amazing that what he knows about dominance. He can tell if you're 90-10 or 80-20 or 85-15, one eye or the other. It's incredible. He can make glasses with prisms in it that help you, get beyond some of this stuff with your eyes. There's something wrong with you. I had a client that he's a 98 average trap shooter, shoots under the bird. He can't break 12. Shoots under the foot. Well, he had a thyroid problem. And if you have a thyroid problem, it affects how you look and where you point. Things like that. Just little things that, he says, let me talk to him. Oh, okay. I get back. How you doing, doc? He goes, what's up? He goes, he's got a thyroid problem. He's on medication. He's going to shoot a foot under everything. This is the guy. And once we kind of wrapped around him about eye dominance, he's really given us some insight about what's going on and why. And it can be fixed, but you can't fix 50-50. One eye is the same. It's central focus. You can't fix like when somebody's 60%, 40%. You're either going to have to dot it or patch it. Otherwise, it's going to take over on certain presentations and angles, and the gun's going to shoot way off to the side every time. There are people that say they're left eye dominant and, they shoot right-handed. It's up in the air to me because I'm not 100% right eye dominant myself. I'm like 95.5, and he's proven that. He's got a machine. He puts this on, and he can tell what you are. And I'm not 100% myself to shoot as well as I shot. But if it was 80-20, there's a difference. My first wife, Terry Banky, she was that way, like 85-15. I know she was. So there's certain birds that in low incomers or anything in sporting, she couldn't hit. She could get a 60-yard crosser, but couldn't hit 15-yard bird coming at you. So she'd shoot off to the left of it. So I know it's there, and it's something in the brain that takes over to make you do that. And I'm just not a firm believer that if you're left eye dominant, you're not going to be a right-handed shooter. You're just not going to do it. You're going to have to learn to shoot besides something. And I'm pretty sure we line up zero. That's how we do everything. We start at zero. We're 1 degree this way or that way. So, we're left or right. That's just how it is. That's how our brain lines everything up. So when you're looking down the barrel and your other eye takes over, your image is seeing the side of the barrel. Recently, I've discovered I have glaucoma. And my right eye, I only have about 50% left in it. My left eye is 98%, but my right eye, I'm on the edge of losing it. It won't be long, 5-8 years probably. I'll be blind in my right eye. And there's sometimes, like with my rifle, I have a little red dot on my rifle. And when it's tiny where I like it, I used to, when I throw it up, my left eye takes over and I see the whole side of the gun. It's a weird look. Anybody that's ever had it, and ladies fight it all the time because most ladies are left eye dominant most of the time. And when I make the dot bigger, well, my eye can see through it okay, I go back to right eye. So far in shotgun shooting, I'm still right eye dominant. All the part I can't see is up on top. It's just kind of coming down slowly like this. So, this is tough to swallow. But right now, I'm still dealing with it. Nothing I can do about it. I'm that kind of guy. If that's what's going to happen, that's going to be what happens to me. It's fine. It's just part of it. I'll shoot left-handed. So I'll go out and practice, shoot left-handed so I can hunt and do things like that. So I'll still be okay. I'm a pretty good left-handed shooter anyway. I did a lot of that in trick shooting back in the day.
you know if the guy is looking for any more business? Because I think you could have just sent him a heap. So he's going to be inundated with inquiries from here on in, I'd say.
He is the guy. If there's people out there with an eye problem, this is the guy, Dr. Colo, Rich Colo. You need to get in touch with him. He can help.
On another technical topic, do you use a pattern board, and how much do you believe the gun setup affects someone's ability to hit targets, or as you say, to be able to look at the target, point and shoot?
Point of impact's important. Sporting, mostly we're all about 60-40, 50-50, 55-60, 45 or 60-40. Too high because we have too many dropping clays, and it's just too difficult to be really, your brain wants to shoot here, but you got to learn here. And it takes a lot of shells to make those changes, to learn how to shoot somewhere else when your brain thinks this is the right spot. So, trap shooting's different. It's 80-20. American trap are all the guns shoot 80% high. 70 would be the minimum because you want to shoot at the bird while it's rising so you can see it break over the gun. So you have to have a high shooting gun. But in sporting is different, where I've never really changed my point of impact. I've always shot 60-40, and even in sporting, even in trap. But in an Olympic trap, it's not, you don't use an 80% high gun because the birds are all over the place. They're this high off the ground or clear a 3-story building. But American trap's very, organized and same height, same speed, tiny angle. So it makes a difference on what guns and what height you shoot to what sport you play.
There's a couple of things I want to ask you about how the sports evolve. Tell me, what do you think of the final system? You won a world championship where it was just straight, whoever hit the most in qualification won it, and then you crossed over. You were at the beginning of this new final system where they shoot 25 targets on top of qualification. But what do you think of the system they're using now, where you give up your qualification score and just for television, you go back to 0 to make it exciting? What's your thoughts on it?
I really don't like it. I don't think it's fair. I really don't. I think they just ought to, it's an old saying, let your gun do the talking. You shoot a great score, you're maybe second or third going in. In the old days, it was 25 birds, total score. You're going to get the very best player that earned it. You go out there and you got a guy that's in 6th place, 7 birds behind the pack, and comes out Olympic champion. I can't wrap around that well. It's okay. They got to change the rules. They got to do something to try to make people watch it, to have some drama. And I understand that, but they could figure out another way. The last system now is a little better. At least every 5 birds, somebody drops out. And it's a little bit more tense. I like that. And then plus your qualification on a tie would allow you to win that situation, which is, that's getting better. In the beginning, it was pretty rough when, you get out there and you shoot good and you still shoot pretty good in the final, but somebody beat you by a bird that you really beat by 6 and they'll have the total score. So it's, you hurt your feelings. The way they're doing it now is better. At least they're giving the qualification guy that wins or highest an opportunity, if there is a tie, to be able to win that tie for that reason. That'd be the only good thing so far. But
what did you think of the USA not getting a men's trap competitor to the 2008 and the 2012 Olympics? For someone that was so part of the team like you were, that must have amazed you a little bit that the USA couldn't even qualify.
I know. It was tough. I've lost sleep over it, trying to figure out why we can't make it happen. We just, at that time, the talent just wasn't there. All the talent had retired, really. And it just wasn't there. Skeet, we've always had talent. We could always fill in the gap there. But in trap, it kind of made me want to come out of retirement.
Yeah.
I feel like I could do it, but that was a while back, and I could still I shot a lot then, so it was different. I was shooting a lot of sporting. I shooting pretty good, but it's confidence there. It wouldn't take but a year maybe to get back. I have a bunker that Glenn Eller's father built for him right down the road from me, and I have the key to get in, and I work with kids all the time on that bunker and just keep it working, to keep it tip top shape. So, but oh man, it's a sad thing. We took a lot of grief over that. A lot of grief.
Well, it's clear that your heart's still in it, especially if you're considering coming out of retirement to solve this. I'm sure there's a better solution than that. And I think it's something that a lot of countries do struggle with, and that is their development program. I interestingly think the US has a very good development system. Being a skeet shooter, maybe that's why I feel that way, but taking shooters from the cream of another discipline and then fostering them through the ISSF ranks, I think is a really great way to go. What is your thoughts on that?
Well, I think the system we have here is awesome. It's just, it's the hiring the right coaches and paying the money that they need to be able to come in there to do that. It's just more, it's a very difficult challenge. These kids, when they first start, need a good start and they need good coaching. Most of these kids that make these teams, not all of them comes from the center. They did this time, but they did a good job. But now they're not. We have a sporting clay shooter making it, so out of the blue, Derek Mine. That guy he's kind of like Matt Drake in his mind. When he sets his mind to it, watch out. He's a great pigeon shooter, great clay shooter, all of it. He's done it all. So he can shoot. There's no doubt. He's going to be a threat.
Do you happen to know how many trench or international trap layouts there are, or I should say bunker layouts actually, there are in America?
Well, when I started, I think there was 20 altogether when I started, but now it's probably 100, I would think, probably.
It just made me wonder if one of the reasons why it's so much harder for trap is access to a layout to be able to practice and, of course, compete against other high-level competitors.
Well, trap's a different breed than skeet. Skeet, you know where it's going. It's a whole different level of competition. When you know where something's going, that's the same distance from you every single time. In the end, it's easier. But trap, you have to be able to count. So you got to be smart enough to be able to know what bird you're getting in the last two passes to be able to compete. If you can't count, you're not going to win. There's things like that you don't do in skeet. The bird is quick out of the box. It's a very difficult challenge to play the game properly. The visual aspect of trap is the most important part. It's skeet too, but how you set your eyes, where you're looking when you call pull. As the years go by, I get better and better with understanding all that. It's easier to teach when you really get a grasp of how your eye actually works, being your center focus, paracentral. It has to stay on the bird to be able to make things happen. But skeet will always be better scores and be easier simply because you know where it's going. That's all. It's 21 yards away max distance. When trap, you don't know. There's that ultimate surprise for at least 18 of those targets you shoot out of the 25 that you're not sure of. So it's always that part where your eye has to do the right thing in the beginning to get the right signal to your brain to make your hands make the good move you need to be able to hit it, because that game has no mercy. International trap is probably the nastiest game I've ever played. The scores, you could take any great American trap shooter and put him out there. And I remember KO, he came to Fort Benning. He's a legend in trap shooting, a legend, and walked out with it. He brought a single barrel trap gun. I think he shot 12 or 13 his first round. And he was just shaking his head. He's never seen anything like it before. And, it's brutal. It's absolutely brutal. It will embarrass you, international trap will, especially, when you have the bunker with the canyon in front of it. It's a different way to look. And there's just a lot going on. But when I look up and see high two, I can set my eyes to the front of that box in a certain circle every single time. And it's the same thing over and over and over, but not bunkered. That ultimate surprise is the part that makes it so hard. And why the scores are always a few birds lower than skeet.
You're killing me here. There's always a bit of a rivalry in this house between trap versus skeet, and which is the easiest. And you've just confirmed that I'm wrong.
Well, I'm sorry, but I shot both. I've shot both.
That's what makes it worse.
Because I begged, bro, let me shoot skeet. Because I never shot skeet before. And bro, I'm like, bro, let me try it. So he finally let me shoot, and it's just coming out of there every single time right there. Okay, so once you hit 10 or 12 or 20 or 100 in a row, you probably have a good handle on it. But when you get a 45 right, or you walk up to that station on post 3 and you got 3 passes left, you got a left and you got a right. I got one of each one of those still to come, okay? Because I'm trying to make sure that if I get the left now, I got a straight and a right, I'm going to get on the next pass. So, that's the problem with the trap is, you don't know what you're getting. And that's the most difficult part because you know the 45 right's coming. Win. So you got to, it's just hard to blank all that out and just and be calm and just take whatever comes out. That's probably why he went to doubles trap.
Yeah.
Because he could do it good too. And I watched him win that medal.
He told me
I watched him win that gold medal.
He's always told me that 2's better than 1. Should I be worried?
Danny, yeah, you're killing it. Danny, I've got to ask you, did you always count Olympic trap targets in the round? Did you do that your entire career?
You had to count. If you didn't count, you couldn't win. You look at it, it's like sporting is at the last 5 targets. So you're going to get 7 targets for sure every round if you're counting on your last 2 passes. You're going to get 7 every time if you can count. You sometimes get 8 or 9 if the rotation on the computers, it's luck, but you can get 8 or 9 of where they're going. So that's just how it works. You have to count. If you can't count, then you can't do it. Very few guys are going to be world champion without counting.
Sadly, Danny, I know a few Olympic trap shooters that can't count that high, so they never were able to count. Just a question.
Well, in the old days, we just throw the hole over to the right, and then throw the hole to the left. But they got rid of that. They outlawed that real quick after they figured we were doing that. So then we had to, actually stay in the game in another part. Like Glenn, it's a pretty easy thing. It's you count, either add or subtract. I got 2, 1, 2, and then I shoot. Now I got 1, 1, 2, and then I shoot another left. Now I got 0, 1, 2. So it just how it works. So you just in your mind, it sticks in there. But I think after I didn't learn to count immediately. It took a year or so for me to learn how to do that. Once I kind of learned the game, and I think that's part of it. Once the game starts to get under control, I think my last few years of shooting, I carried like a 97.3, 97.4 average in international bunker trap. And that was about what I shot. I know that I talked to the Colonel Greenwood, which was in charge of our unit at that time, a couple of weeks ago. He's 89 years old now. We had a nice long talk, and he reminded me of my 97.4 average when he was there. So that's how I know, because I knew I shot okay, 97 something average, but that's not good enough to win. 91, 94 didn't win. You had to shoot better than that. So you always had to shoot a little better and to win a big championship. You had to shoot you had to shoot 4 or 5 birds better than your normal shooting in 200 birds, or you're not going to win the big show.
Danny, I've asked this question to Kim Rohde. We asked it to everyone, to Derek Mine. I've asked Josh Lakatos. I've asked it to Vincent Hancock.
Yeah.
The USA selection policy for the Olympic Games team is just a straight 500 targets. Everybody goes to the event, and whoever hits the most gets into the Olympic team. But the Italians, as you well know, they would never do that. They're only ever going to pick who they believe are the best 2 people to go to the Olympic Games. Which do you believe is the best policy, the Italians or the United States, to win an Olympic gold?
Well, the Italians, I've seen that with the Italians. When they come to a shoot, every time we get there, even if we're a week early, they're already there. They've been training for 2 weeks, and there'll be 8 of them for a 4-man team. And then the day before, the names are on the board. Who picked that team, that coach? And, if I was one of the below ones, my feelings would be hurt. It's kind of a catch-22 because the coach knows them better than anybody, and it's his responsibility. And if that's their rule and he does it, because he did a good job, because they dominated that sport pretty much and in the world for a long time, dominated it. So what they were doing was, in their mind, was right. And I'm sure they probably still do that same thing to this very day. We're pretty democratic here, so it's a little bit different process for y'all too. I'm sure y'all have to do the same thing we do in your country. But over there, it's yours, and they're going to do what that coach tells them, or somebody maybe above him. I'm not positive, but they whoever was picking the teams did a good job, because they could shoot, and they picked the right ones.
Before we let you go, and I know we appreciate your time, but I'm just interested in your thoughts also on the Professional Sporting Clays Tour, or the association. It kicked off for a bit, but it's died again. But do you think they'll resurrect it? because it seemed to be a great nurturing ground for talent in sporting clays, and you guys got good because of it. But will it ever eventuate again?
I think so. I really do. When we did it, I did all the rules and the regulations and put up most all that together. And the format, how they're going to shoot. It's just like golf, really. It's the same kind of format as golf, professional golf. And I wanted the PSCA to stand above everybody else in America for sporting clay associations. And there's, always more than one most of the time. And I wanted it to stand above and make it. And it kind of went to a game at the end. And just because of the money situation, it's expensive. It's $1 million down the drain just to get that started. So it's not cheap to do it. I think it could happen. I believe that finally the NSCA are coming around a little bit better in our association sporting clays to be able to, for example, you can't get the master class, the highest class, by shooting small gauge anymore. So they eliminated that rule because they had so many master classes, guys, and people that couldn't break 90. They couldn't average even 88. Well, if you're a master class guy, you got to be somewhat a little bit more worthy to be able to get to the point where you're at least averaging 90 to get in the gate. You know what I mean? So it kind of separates the classes right, and they're on the right track. So what I think their next move will probably be is make some sort of elite class. And maybe some money comes out of everybody's entry that goes into that class, and they have more options available to them as their separate class to be able to compete. And then that would give them, more money to make. So maybe people could actually make a living doing this sport instead of just being a shooting bum like most people that travel the country with, not the means to really do it, shoot to shoot, and then have to go home and go back to work for 6 months and go back at it again. So, it's a big deal for us right now. Our sport's growing fast. We're 40-something thousand in our association now, and there's like 7 million shoot, annually or regularly in our country. And the new statistics are, I guess, coming out into this year with the NSSF, and we're going to know exactly pretty much how many people shoot actively sporting clays because it's growing so fast. There's a range on every corner. Now I live in Texas, and we probably got more than everybody else, most likely, because we like to shoot here. We like a lot of bird hunting going on. Texas, a lot of good great duck hunting and quail and dove hunting. So a lot of things going on here in Texas. Of course, all this COVID virus and all this stuff's such a bad deal. It slowed everything down. It's really hurt a lot of business and gun club businesses too. But it's a lot of them. Our attorney general came on from Texas, said gun clubs and gun shops were a must for Texans, and they could stay open if they wanted to. So it kind of gave us a break there and didn't shut us down, so we can still work and still, we all wear masks and stuff, but we're still getting along and still kind of coming back together. And right now it's going crazy because everybody's sitting in their house, can't go outside, and, just going nuts. I don't know about you guys in Australia, but everybody's shooting right now. My schedule, I'm packed. I can't get my head up for the next 2 or 3 months still. So it's just, and normally start slowing down when it gets cool because of the hunting season. People like to hunt, so the business gets a little slower, and then winter's a little slower, then it comes back in the spring. And this year, after March and April, starting in May, it's just been going 100 miles an hour. It's just crazy. I think everybody's just tired of sitting around. They want to go out and do something. And outside is where they said we can be. We can play golf, we can shoot, we can be outside. That's fine. So I see a huge growth in the sport. And then part of that growth is, our target presentations. Here in this last year or so in sporting clays, they're setting targets to break 90% for the best shooter. Well, when the C-class shooter shoots 62 out of 200, I'm pretty sure you're not very happy driving out of the gate that day. You're like, I'm not sure, maybe I'll take up fishing again, or something like that. I mean, you think about it, to grow the sport, people have to have fun, number one. So really, it doesn't matter to me if Anthony Matarese or Corey Cruz or Russell Mark comes over our country and breaks 98 and wins our sporting clay championship, or wins a big tournament with a 195. That's fine. Who cares? But the C-class guy and the 8 on down is what supports our whole industry. So, to make them happy is what grows the sport, period. So, I have a little thing when they set targets so hard that the C, A, B, and C, and D shooters that actually are the majority of all the classes all together. They outweigh everybody, and that's what's growing the sport, is that beginner shooter coming in. And then you can't punish them so hard that they're so embarrassed leaving that they just don't like this. I hate this right now. You know, it's just embarrassing. Their egos are way too, you know, most of the people that can shoot have good jobs, or they're smart and they have businesses, and, you know, they have enough money. Y'all know it's expensive to do this. It's not cheap. And they all have good, they don't like losing. Losing is just not in their vocabulary. You know, you don't like losing in business or when you shot. So it's the same thing for them. And I think one day everybody's going to wrap around that. And it's okay if the best shooters shoot great scores. They're supposed to. And if they have an elite class, they can always have a separate event, a separate 100-bird set up for those guys to shoot. Then let everybody else shoot this. And it would make a change. And that would give them something to work for to get there. And, you know, they would shoot more, and it would probably create even more shooters, because now I've got an opportunity to be a pro. Shooting up the ranks makes sense. That's just like golf or baseball or football or any other sport you've ever played. Tennis, you start at the bottom and work your way to the top. So it's how it works. Someday we'll get there.
Well said. You've been very generous with your time, and you do have a wealth of knowledge. I would just like to ask you this question. If you're an up-and-coming shooter and you can only give them one piece of advice, what would be the most important bit of advice you could give them?
If you're going to be a shooter, the absolutely most important thing is learning how to see the target in detail when the gun ignites. If you can do that, it doesn't matter before you fire or after you fire. If you can see the curve on the edge of the target when you fire every single time, you'll be great. And I tell people in my classes this. We do classes all over the country, and, you know, we do big classes. I got quite a few instructors that work with me and that we do classes at. And I tell people, if I had a pill that I could give you to make you look at 125 targets on the edge when you fired, I'd be living in Boca Raton on my yacht right now, and you'd never see me again, okay? But it's not like that. But that's the advice. There's two things, really. Connection is the gun. The gun has to match the speed of the clay to make the bird slow down in the mind's eye. Without it, you're never going to make it to the next level. That's the gun part. But the eye, it has to do it all. Without the eye, you got nothing. So the eye is the eye.
Yeah, Danny, you've been an absolute legend in the sport, and it's great to record some of the history for your words. And we really appreciate your time today. It's been a long time since we've caught up, but all of the viewers will love this and the insight that you've given us. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you.
Appreciate you guys inviting me and letting me be a part of this. Thanks so much, and good seeing y'all, especially all grown up now. Too. Bye, y'all.
Bye.
Cheers, mate.
Bye.